Is Lavia hurt again?
We don't even have a natural replacement for Caicedo.
Right.
Damn, man.
Me too. I'm good with whatever, honestly.
Welcome back, everybody. Episode 38 of the Back Pocket Podcast, pivoting to the other football that we do, and that is soccer. Again, I say this every time we do that, but saying soccer definitely feels, immediately like we're uneducated, but I promise you we do know what we're talking about. And as always, I'm joined by my two wonderful co-hosts, Suraj Kadali and Charlie Nidell. Gentlemen, are we ready to talk Premier League? It's been, I think, since this summer since we've talked. So obviously, as avid fans of not only the Premier League but also teams within, it has been quite an up and down season. As me, a Liverpool fan, Charlie, a Chelsea fan, Surge, I have no idea. But yeah, two teams that are extremely volatile. Mine more than Charlie. We'll get into that more in the episode, gentlemen. How do we feel on this? I think for probably all of us, very frigid Thursday.
Yeah. I mean, I'm not going out for the rest of the day. It is absolutely freezing, but I am super excited to talk ball. Um, yeah, last time I do believe it was the preseason preview for the season, and obviously a lot has changed, and I'm excited to get into it.
Yeah, for sure. Keen, you said Liverpool may be more volatile than Chelsea. I'm not sure that that can be true at this point.
Yeah, I
You
mean,
can't really go and, tie Arsenal with 10 men and then lose to Leeds the next day. So, you know, something's got to be figured out there. But I'm excited to talk ball.
that is something we will get into. We'll dive right into it. So obviously, as you talked about, Chelsea, Arsenal, two of the teams. I guess Chelsea now still in the title race, but definitely a step back after that Leeds loss. I mean, I guess Charlie, we can dive right into that. We might as well. I guess kind of the first thing we want to talk about is that title race. You know, split off into more of a two-horse race with City and Arsenal, with obviously the Chelsea loss and then coming off as well a draw against Arsenal, a well-earned draw, I will say. But I mean, yeah, I guess Charlie, when you kind of look at that, and the title race is Chelsea out of it, and kind of what do you see now? Obviously, is we're a quarter of the way through the season, maybe probably a little more, right?
A little more, yeah.
Yeah,
Third,
almost halfway. Yeah.
yeah. Oh yeah, wow, God, it's crazy. Yeah, I mean, is that the separation you see? Is Chelsea just not in
Yeah,
it?
I mean, I think it's really tough. I don't think that this team is ready to win a title. I think it's really close because there is talent, very apparent talent across the board. When you look at the back line, the midfield, the forward line, and the coach. I think Enzo Maresca is truly a very brilliant coach. I think he's doing a really great job. He has lapses. He is not 100% of the time the guy that you can look to. He coached a complete masterclass against Barcelona last Tuesday. Um, I mean, truly nobody saw it coming, and it was genius from him, from game plan to execution. Everything that Chelsea did worked, and that's because of what Maresca set up the team to do. Then you go into Wednesday or into Sunday against Arsenal, and Chelsea started that game out really well too. Caicedo's very unfortunate red card changed the game plan, but still, after that, Maresca coached a great game, and they were able to fend off what most people see as the best team in the world for 70 minutes of 11 versus 10. And I think that the 10 versus 11 made the game pretty even. Um, Chelsea was the far more dominant team with 11 players on the field. But then you go into Tuesday or Wednesday, sorry, yesterday against Leeds, and you're just expecting a thrashing from Chelsea. And then Caicedo's on a red card. There's no natural replacement because of injuries. Reece James takes a day off for rest. And all of a sudden, Chelsea didn't really put out a very menacing lineup and just looked overall very poor and lost to a, relegation bound team by the end of the season. So there are definitely lapses in judgment still, and that's why I don't think this team's ready to win a title. There's a lack of experience, and this season overall, they've been hit by the injury bug with Levi Colwill missing pretty much the entire season. Cole Palmer's been out for the last 11 weeks or so. And then, a couple of replacements as well. So I don't think the team's ready to win a title, but we'll go into more Arsenal, Manchester City in a second. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think
Yeah.
when you look at that race, and I'm sure I would assume you guys agree with this. I find it extremely extremely hard, even for Arsenal, to somehow not win this title. I think you look at even City, the next runner up, that game against Fulham, the fact that they almost got caught with a 5-1 lead was incredible. That was a great game, but I think, to hone in on Arsenal, when you look at this team and you look at even past winners, this is the most, fully healthy, the most complete team I've ever seen. You look at their center back backup duo of Hincapié and Mosquera is probably a top five duo in the league in and of itself. And you look at obviously their most strong duo in Saliba and Gabriel. Obviously, I think he's the best in the league, but you just look at the amount of versatility they have, not only with players, being able to put Marino up top and then he wins you this game this past weekend. Madueke, who's kind of found a little bit of form it's a team that is so well put to play on multiple fronts. Carabao, FA Cup, Champions League, beating Bayern Munich, who obviously I think before that game when Arsenal beat them, I think was the best team in the world, and Arsenal obviously proved why they weren't. But yeah, I'd love to hear what you guys think, but I think as any soccer fan that watches the Premier League avidly or the Champions League, I would find it very hard for people to not see Arsenal as the best team in the world, not only because of performances, but just the way this team is built. They have absolutely no holes, not only in their first squad, but in their second. It's still an incredibly talented team. And again, as a Liverpool fan, we'll talk about them next, but it's, to me, the title's gone already. And obviously for me, it's different. Liverpool are much farther behind, but if you're a City fan, and Charlie, even if you're a Chelsea fan, I just find it very hard to see this team slip up like they have in years past.
Yeah, 100% agree. I mean, you look at Arsenal, probably the first time where really they are clear favorites at this point, at this stage of the season to win the
100%. Yeah,
title. I
yeah.
mean, you can look at 22, 23, where they were so far ahead of City, but then, like Kean talked about, they didn't have that depth that they had that they have now. And you have a City team that had Haaland, that had De Bruyne, that had Rodri, where now they're kind of a bit of in a transition period. I 100% agree. This has to be the year, especially with, like you said, the amount of guys that they can rotate. And this is really, I feel like, what separates Arsenal from teams like Chelsea and City is, like you said, that depth, where Chelsea, they had to rotate a bunch of guys. And, like, especially that back line where Arsenal go from Gabriel and Saliba to Nkapie and Mosquera, while Chelsea, it was Tosin Adarabioyo. Who was the other center back for? Was it Chalobah, right?
Tosin and
I
Chalobah,
think.
yeah.
Yeah, where just the depth isn't the same, and I
Yeah, I
don't
mean, you
think
look at
that
that
not
that
only
duo versus the one that Arsenal, even like I said, the second line of Arsenal, it's not, not even comparable.
yeah, absolutely. And I think when you look at that, where Arsenal can now withstand having periods where I think almost all of their first team players their best players have missed time, where Gabriel and Saliba both missed games. Saka missed a couple about a month earlier in the season. Odegaard's been in and out of the lineup all season long. This is a team that is equipped to go to the distance, where I don't even think a City team, which has been known for their depth under Pep Guardiola, really has that same level of depth. And you also look at a City team that obviously isn't nearly as strong defensively. I'll give credit to them because I did think they would be a lot worse than that. They weren't even going to be in a title race. I really underestimated their midfield. Guys like Nico Gonzalez have had a really good year. You have Foden, who's regaining his form after a poor season last year, where they definitely can push Arsenal, and Arsenal shouldn't think that the title's over right now. But I just think in terms of depth, in terms of first team quality, where Arsenal have one of the best defenses in the world, dare I say, one of the better defenses we've seen in recent years in Premier League history, it's just hard to see them slipping up this time.
Yeah, agreed. This is a team that's looked so strong all season, and I think we were all ready for that kind of clash of titans between Arsenal and Bayern a week ago. Bayern, a team that had not lost all season, had won every single game they'd played in until the game before Arsenal,
Yeah.
uh, and then Arsenal complete domination over Bayern. Um, it was hard to watch just from a Chelsea fan perspective, a Premier League fan perspective, just watching how good Arsenal was. Unlucky not to, or they were lucky not to be punished more by Chelsea this week, but they rebound really well. They always do. They took care of business yesterday against Brentford. Uh, Now, look, real big test coming up. They've got Aston Villa this weekend, I believe, at Aston Villa, which that is never an easy game, especially this is a Villa team that is now, I think, kind of quietly crept up into third place. Um, Maybe even they could be joining the title race considerations for now. Um, but they've been a really strong team. So yeah, I think right now it's going to be hard to see Arsenal dethroned with a 5-point lead. they'd have to slip up a couple more times soon to give anybody any hope. And I think any other team in the
Yeah.
Prem is much more likely to slip up than they are.
Yeah, I think that's exactly what I was gonna say. Obviously the past few seasons when you look at those City, Liverpool races, those Liverpool Arsenal races, generally those games were decided maybe by an outlier of a team slipping up, but generally the games between one another, especially when you look at Liverpool City in those past seasons, those games of who essentially beat the other team. You know, whereas you look at every other team, City, Liverpool, Arsenal, Villa, Newcastle, every team, Sunderland, I guess technically is there still, all of those teams are going to give up points, are going to leak points, ties, losses. And that's just how the season has gone. Whereas Arsenal, you look at Liverpool last year, you just never thought they would lose a game in the Premier League. Like there was just never really a moment where you thought they would lose. Arsenal are that team this year, and that's the team that wins it. You look at City and their, dominance over the Premier League for 5 years. You never were going into a game thinking, oh, City, this might be, a tough matchup. Whereas as a Liverpool fan, I go into that Sunderland game yesterday. I'm like, yeah, I like immediately you don't. And that as a Liverpool fan, that's might be the first time I've ever felt that besides when I was like 10, when we were, finishing seventh. It was just every single other team in any moment. And that's why we love the Premier League. Just seems like they can slip up, whereas Arsenal don't. So I guess, I'm kind of going to ask who we think's going to win the league. I think we've all answered that. I think Arsenal, if you don't, it'll obviously the haters of Arsenal, me included, will love it because the choking rumors and bottling the league every single year has been something that we have loved to capitalize on. But I find that very hard to be the reality of this year. It just seems impossible, and they seem like an inevitable champion, which sucks because you just wanted Arsenal to stay out of it for as long as possible. Even Chelsea this year, you would have liked to see over them, but
Mm.
it's tough. Gentlemen, we'll move on. That was quick. I think that was I expected that. The title race definitely seems to be a little more of a one horse race. But talking about last year's champions, my favorite team, the flag behind me, Liverpool FC. Obviously, we know the season they've had has not been good. Obviously, in our episode notes, we have obviously the topic and then potential revitalization to be decided after the Sunderland game, which we ended up drawing. And look, I will say, do I think we could have won that game? And do I think we played our best? Not at all. I think we could have won, but we did not put out the best foot. And I just think it's kind of the story with Liverpool this season. It's you start slow, there's not many chances. It's just the complete 180 of that team we saw the past 3 years, high octane, constantly threatening to score. Whereas we just sit back, take pressure, Sunderland look good, hit the crossbar, Lafay, and then they score first, and that kind of wakes us up, which honestly has done that to Liverpool. They haven't won it, and we luckily get that Verts goal, or I guess the Mukiele own goal. But it's just that foot behind. It's that step back where I think Liverpool have taken. And as a fan, I'll be honest, when we started to lose, I was extremely upset. But, look, when I look back, at this team, it's an overhaul. You have an older Van Dijk, an older Salah. Konate's not been playing well. You have an injured Allison, which when you look at past seasons has been a huge problem for us. When you look at losses, Isak didn't have a preseason and still is not performing. Ekitike, can't really find a spot in the team, and you have to kind of start Isak. Verts, I think, has found his position. I think he's starting to play fantastically, but still, again, no assist, no goal yet, technically. So again, when you kind of look at this Liverpool team, yes, they've signed so much talent and they have brought in immense amounts, but obviously the being able to intertwine those players and create a team that plays well together takes time. So I'm not as mad as I was, but kind of for you guys as an outside perspective, what do you think has been the collapse of Liverpool, and what do you think, how they'll end the season out, and kind of just what are your thoughts so far on this team?
Well, when you look at the teams right now this year in the Premier League, who are probably, I would say, either the best teams or the biggest overachievers, I look at right now Arsenal, obviously. I look at Aston Villa right now, and I look at Sunderland. And when I look at those three teams, one thing that really stands out for me is the physicality and the athleticism in those teams. Where you have Villa, they have that amazing pivot of Kamara and Onana, who've been playing great. Sunderland, Xhaka, who I'll talk about in a later segment, and Siddiqui, who have been, I think, one of the most physical midfield pairings in the league. And I just think with Liverpool right now, they just don't have that physicality. They don't have what you talked about. What made Liverpool great was how high octane they were, where they just run over teams, where they couldn't keep up with their intensity. I just don't feel like that intensity is there this season. And I think maybe as much as they did have a lot of reinforcements, a lot of new players that they brought in, I think they could have stood to. I think they may have overdone it in some positions. Namely, I'll talk about the Isak Ekitike duo, which I mean, to be fair, it could come to fruition in later years. I know it wasn't obviously, oh, they have to be great together this year, but I do think that they always needed to kind of bring in another guy in midfield there because yes, they did win the title with that Gravenberch, um, McAllister pivot, but I do think that it wasn't something that was going to be necessarily sustainable long term. And the one player that I feel like really has stood out for Liverpool has been amazing has been Szoboszlai, who I said even before the season where he's had a great year, I always said that I felt like was one of Liverpool's most important positions because most important players because of how important he is to Liverpool's style, where he'll cover so much ground. He's someone who has that athleticism, someone who will contribute attack and defense, can play anywhere on the field. I just think that Liverpool are missing another player like that, specifically in the midfield or on at fullbacks. I feel like they just haven't really replaced that from what they've missed in previous years.
Yeah, I mean, I think we're gonna see, to answer your, immediate last question, Kian. I think we're gonna just see a lot more of this season. Um, 6 wins, 6 losses kind of vibe. I know they've now played a couple more games and their record's not exactly that. But I think that that's what Liverpool's kind of destined for this season. Um, it's going to be one of those teams that maybe they make a late Europe push. And I think they probably do end up with some form of European football because it would be, kind of shocking to go from champions to outside the top 8. But it's just so tough to me because I feel like right now Slot is doing a really bad job with this team. Um, there are obviously some players underperforming. You can look at the new signings. You can look at guys like Salah and Kanate who just aren't having their greatest seasons. But at the end of the day, I think Slot has been this season running from any kind of pressure and running away from uh any failures, any misfortunes, and he's been just trying to avoid it. Which isn't always the best way to approach what I said would happen at the beginning of this season. That's clearly happening is a rebuild. You can't run away from players playing badly when you're trying to, get them connected. This Liverpool team has looked so disjointed this season. They've just haven't looked like a cohesive group, kind of similar to 2023 Chelsea, how they, it's clear that there are a lot of really talented players on the field. They just don't look great together. And what Slot's doing is he's not letting them get that groove. He's not going out with a consistent team, and he's reverting to playing Joe Gomez and Andy Robertson at outside back. When you sign players and you want to fit them in, you've got to do your best and you got to do everything you can to get them involved as much as possible. And he's relying too much on the old guard to kind of smooth out the transition where uh, the transition's just going to take longer if you use it that way. Robertson is not good enough to start for Liverpool anymore. He's not. Even if he's going to put in a good shift or two every few games, he's not good enough. Joe Gomez, I know people are talking about how great he was against Sunderland, I think, but also not a good enough player. That's why they signed Frimpong and
Well,
Kirkes
we
in
don't
the
have. He
first
has
place.
to play. We don't have another right back.
But it's the reason that you have Connor Bradley, who
He's
was,
also injured.
supposed to be potentially rotational with Frimpong. You've got Frimpong, you've got Kirkes, who you signed this season. You just got to get these guys in their roles. And then the guy who's playing the best is Hugo Ekitike, who's now been forced to the bench because Isak is supposed to be better. You got to win games. And you've got to get your guys playing together, and it's just not going well right now, and it's really concerning. Um, do I think they'll figure it out? Of course, it's Liverpool Football Club. This is not a long-term thing. But this season, I think this is what you can expect from this team is a very volatile, very hit or miss squad with a lot of rotation and not a clear identity and clear game plan as a team. That's what they're lacking this season that they never lacked before in the last 10 years or so.
Yeah, I
Yeah, I
think
mean,
what it comes down to is when you look at. I will say this. I think losing Luis Diaz was the biggest loss of I think any of the top big clubs. I think Luis Diaz is an identity of a player we do not have anymore. Like Salah isn't that anymore. Luis Diaz is the identity of that. He fit into this team so well. And I think when you look at the rebuild of the team, look, am I very happy that we got Isak, we got Ekitike, we got Verts and Frimpong? Yes, I am. But I do think when you look at the team last year and how dominant we were, and not unlucky, the PSG, obviously they were unbelievable last year. I think Liverpool were, finals bound if they had not been paired up with PSG. You look at just how dominant they were last year. I think you hold on to the team another year at least. You look at how they won the Prem. I think you keep Diaz, you keep Nunez. Look, maybe you sell Nunez, you bring Isak, some type of. But I think the overhaul we did was just a little bit too much. And look, I know it's hard to complain that because we've gotten from the past 2 seasons, already the best 10 in the world. Isak, who was probably the best striker in the Premier League last year, alongside Holland. Ekitike, who's been fantastic, and we saw how he kind of fits in. It's hard to complain. Frimpong, another fantastic signing. Kirkez, one of the best left backs in the Premier League last season. So it's tough to be mad and also kind of want that old guard. But I think if we had a mixture of the two, I will say this. And look, I think the Ekitike Isak thing is a deal of its own. I think we need to see Ekitike playing on the left more with Isak, or playing, some type of front three. I think an Ekitike, Chiesa, Isak front three would be fantastic. Yeah, I just think for Slot, it's that you lose 2 games and then you kind of make a change, and then they win, and then they
Lose two
put
more.
out that team and it loses. So again, look, I do think Slot obviously has been shying away, and I do think if we had a fully healthy team, this would be a different conversation. I think it would be, obviously would be a better team with healthier players. And I do think that losing Bradley, losing Frimpong, which I think is the left side of our defense, the left back side, obviously has been the less sure one. Whereas I think Connor Bradley was fantastic against Real Madrid. I think if he had stayed healthy, he would have been the nailed on starter there. And again, it's I think it really all comes down to is, yeah, you have a bunch of new players and trying to gel that. And I think Charlie, a fantastic example of that is Chelsea. Obviously, that was a little more extensive than Liverpool, what they did, but you just see the constant signing new players, signing new players, signing new players. Obviously, hurt them. Ekitike started the season fantastic. You sign Isak, and then obviously you see a stunt in his playing style. So yeah, I mean, I don't think there's many combating opinions here. I think most Liverpool fans will agree that it's that you can't really argue that there's positives here. But yeah, I
Well, I,
think
I think this is where I agree and disagree with you a little bit. I do agree that I think they maybe went a little overboard with all the signings this summer. They won the league and then switched everything,
yeah.
which is not maybe not the right call. But when you think about the team they won the league with, I don't think that you can argue that that's the strongest team that's won the league in the last 5 years.
Oh, no, no,
It
no, no,
may
no,
be,
yeah.
you know, close to the bottom of the last five winners. I do think it was a strong team and it was one of the best in the world. But when you look at the caliber of player, Darwin Nunez was the starting striker for much of the season. That's not a Premier League quality, starting striker. You had an aging Robertson, an aging Van Dijk as part of the back line. Um, I'm gonna get, a ton of opinions for this take, but this is one that I've stood by for the last 12 months or so. Salah had an amazing season, but he did not look like Mo Salah. His
Last
control on
year,
the ball last year and much more this year, he looks like an aging player. His control on the ball is just not as good. He scored so many goals and had so many assists, but he didn't play the same style as a younger, quicker Mo Salah was able to play. And he still put up numbers, so there was nothing to be worried about. This season, he's not getting the same production. You start to get worried. And so I think that Slot saw this as an opportunity to change the guards, to change from it was an aging team, bring in some young talent, bring in some, yeah, I mean, guys who people thought were nailed on talents. Isak, Ekitike, Frimpong, Verts. These are guys who have made their names as some of the best players in the world at their position. Um, no individual signing can you look at and say, wow, we shouldn't have signed him. But as a whole, I just don't think he picked the right players for how they wanted to play. So I agree with you that they did too much, but I also think that he did the right thing in saying we need to figure something out for the future. He
I
just
think
he just did it the wrong way.
I think that it was a little bit of an overcorrection too, because I saw a report that after Liverpool lost to PSG, Slot kind of wanted to recreate this Liverpool team, the new era of Liverpool, kind of in the image of PSG. But I just think he went a little bit too attacking. Like I
Yeah.
think they needed a bit more physicality in that defense specifically. Like Kirkis and Frimpong, I think they are good individual players, but is Frimpong someone who you trust to be your starting not starting right back? Because he's a great right wing back because he's tasked with a lot less defensive responsibility, but we've seen him kind of struggle a lot when playing at times in the right back role. And you have Kirkes also who struggled. I do think Kirkes will become good. I think he is a good player, but yeah, I think you really just didn't give Kanate and Van Dyke. Kanate obviously having a bad year, Van Dyke obviously not getting any younger. I think they needed to supplement defensively somewhere, whether or not that was in the pivot, whether or not that was at fullback. They just didn't do that at all. Instead, they went more attacking again, trying to, like I
Well,
said,
I
recreate
just
that
think losing out on
PSG.
the Gahey signing, like
Oh
Gahey was
yeah,
a Liverpool player.
absolutely,
I think if we
absolutely.
had Mark Gahey, this is obviously
I
maybe
think,
not a different discussion, but I genuinely think if we had gotten Gahey over the line, this would be a, we could, if Gahey
and
got over the line, we could have been seeing a Liverpool team that started with a back three.
yeah, that's actually exactly what I was going to say. Especially when you consider they also signed Leona, who ACL now he's
Unfortunate.
out
That
for the
is,
year as well.
again, this is a classic, probably an overreaction as a fan of the club, but after watching his performance against Southampton, I would have loved to see what he would have done in more, bigger games. Because I think, let's just say he continued that form, I think he would be starting over Kanate.
And I think we saw Slot, I think at Feyenoord, he did play a back three at times, especially in Europe, but he did. So I think that definitely I could have seen that becoming the long-term plan because I didn't really understand the signing of both from Pong and Kirkes, who are very attacking minded, kind of a bit lightweight, who are very good attacking defenders, but they're not exactly players where I would play both of them as their fullback. So I definitely think and there is a possibility that the back three maybe might have been in the plans, especially with Verts also left 10. That's where he played a lot at Leverkusen. So I think a lot of things, external things, went out of Liverpool's favor as well. But I also do think that they needed to supplement a little bit more specifically in that midfield, in my opinion.
And the signings you talked about, you don't want to use Frimpong and Kirk as both your starting fullbacks in a back
Right.
four, but it also feels like it was just a total switch of system that just didn't really make sense because it was their system that won them the Premier League last year. They played such a really great style of football that was virtually unstoppable by anyone else. That's why they only lost one game in 38 last year. But then you go from Trent, who was a fullback who liked
Another
to
huge
invert
loss.
and play,
Hmm.
spray long balls into someone like Frimpong who just wants to get down the wing and attack you. And on the left side, you go from a really defensively solid, good crossing fullback in Robertson to someone who is so shaky defensively. And that was something that I thought was pretty obvious last season at Bournemouth, and people kind of refused to see because they just, saw Kirk as this, great up and coming player. He is still weak defensively.
I
Um,
think he has the potential to be
it's
so strong
absolutely
defensively.
something that can
Hmm.
turn into. I mean, Cucurella was really weak defensively his first season at Chelsea.
Like
And
Kirkes,
then
I'm
now
definitely
he's
not
turned
worried
into one of the
about.
best. But Kirk has absolutely has the potential to be one of the top left backs in the league. But right now is too weak defensively to be starting in a back four. And then you go to Verts as the 10, who is you know, last season the 10 was used for Liverpool as a position to just keep the team running. As an engine, Szoboszlai was their 10. He was
Mhm.
their engine in the midfield. He started the press. He worked back defensively. Verts isn't that player. Verts is incredible, but he's not that player. So it was a complete switch in system and they're super inconsistent this season, and you wonder why.
Yeah,
Yeah, and
absolutely. I
I
think you
just
see that at times as well, where you see Liverpool players almost seeming like they don't know what they're doing at times. And I think, look, this is a team that realistically should be, even for obviously they do have weaknesses. This is a team that should be in the title race at this point in the season with the talent that they have. And I just think that what we talked about, like you said, Trent, a huge loss, where their outlet all of last season, the year they won the title, was Salah spraying long balls down the channel where he could either hold the play up or he was still fast enough to get in behind as well. Where now they've completely shifted that, where they're a bit more slow building up. They're not really looking to play those outlet passes to Salah, which is why I think he's declined a lot. It just seems like so many of these guys on the team right now don't know what they're doing in the system change. I mean, it could work long term, but right now it is. I think this is kind of the worst they're going to look right now this season.
yeah, I think I also just think to some extent Salah and Isak don't play very well together. Um,
They
and
both want to score goals. They both want to have the finishing touch in the box.
yeah, I think when you look at that front line last year, which I think like 70% of the time it was Gakpo, Diaz, Salah. And Diaz played
Mm.
fantastic as kind of that striker that would come in. Whereas, yes, are Diaz and Gakpo like goal scorers? Yes. But Diaz is, again, you look at pressing, besides Szoboszlai, Diaz is an engine, never stops running, extremely
Yep.
pacey 101. So
Mm.
Salah was that target man. You bring in now Ekitike, you bring in Isak. It's very, very, ball hoggy, I guess, for lack of a better term. And you look at Salah, and does he have all of the, beyond the right to dribble and take shots and take on men? Yes, 100%. He's been the best player at Liverpool for, nearly what, like at
Ever.
this point, yeah, honestly,
Mm.
probably the best Liverpool player ever. He's been at, he deserves that right. But I think you look now where Isak's getting into positions to score, he's playing to that extent of I'm going to put myself in position to score. Not that Diaz and Gakpo weren't doing that, but they were doing more support roles where Salah was given that ability to do that. So, look, is that a learning curve? And I think they can figure it out. Yeah. I mean, I think you look at Newcastle last season, like Anthony Gordon, obviously not as much as Salah, but a player who is, again, going to goal, looking to score. So I think there is 100%, I think, a world where Salah and Isak work out. I mean, you look at the amount of assists Salah had last season. He's a fantastic passer of the ball. I think you look at his best passes next to Trent, they are very close. You look at some of Salah's
Mm.
assists
Well,
last season, they were
I know. I think
unbelievable.
so. I
You look
agree.
at his one to Gakpo against City where he curves it into the like passes you just don't understand how those work. Um so again, a big part of Salah's game. He's a fantastic passer, especially in the final third, finding the right player. So I do think there's a world where that happens. But again, is it Salah being like, "Hey, I'm the veteran player here. I need to put it on my back to go and score, and this needs to be something I'm doing." Where I think Slot might need to sit down to him and be like, "Hey, look, again, he's getting older. Maybe he goes into more of a distributor role, more of a kind of assisting player role, which I think Salah could be fantastic at, and I think would be a good phase switch for him. But yeah, 100%. There needs to be some type of 11 that starts that finds that form, and I just think that that's something that there would be a learning curve with. But is the talent there 100%? Isak getting his first goal, I think, is huge. I think getting him off the mark, and again, we have Case off the bench, who I think needs to start, and that's a whole nother the conversation. But I'm confident we'll land in the top 5. I think we will. I'm not very worried about that. But again, it's when does that wake up call happen? Like when do we string together 3 wins? That's when we can finally be like that. And again, it's a very real possibility that doesn't happen. January comes around. I wonder what we do then. I'd assume there is some type of defensive signing. I would be very surprised if we don't look to bring in another center back. So we'll see. But that is the situation there, and it is a tough one as a Liverpool fan. But we'll move on to potentially a more happier subject, at least for me. We're gonna go over our best signings of the season and then our worst signings. This is a subject I love. This is what we did last season. People enjoyed it. So I'll pose a question to you guys. We'll go best signings first. Charlie, I'll ask you or Serge, whoever wants to answer first. Who do you think is the best signing of the season so far in the Premier League?
there are a couple names I'll throw out there. Um, the first one, this is a little bit of bias, but also hasn't quite stepped up in the Premier League yet, is Estevao. This is a guy who's totally stepped up in the Champions League, has yet to hit, really hit his stride in the Prem. So he's not my pick for this. You can really look at any of the Sunderland players here that they've brought in. Um, and then another one I really like is Jack Grealish at Everton, who looks like maybe Premier League player of the season so far. So not just signing of the season, but the guy I'm going to settle on, Serge, I think I'm stealing your pick here, is Granit Xhaka
That's who
of
I had.
Sunderland.
Yep.
Because this is a
Yep.
guy who has
I
just
knew
stepped into a
I knew all
team.
3 of us would pick that.
He has stepped into this team, and the role he's playing is beyond words. He does everything for them. He's the engine in the midfield. He's the leader off the field. He's an incredible passer, still a great defender. And he's even scoring a couple goals. Um, yeah, it's got to be Xhaka for me.
It is
Yeah,
immense when
absolutely.
you look at the impact a player can have, not because of their skill, but just because of them, because of who they are, because of the type of leader they are. And that's I was going. I knew I should have known this was gonna happen. I knew all of us because we're not
Mhm.
gonna go with someone on City. I knew we're all
Right.
sweaty and we're gonna obviously all pick Xhaka. But yeah, that's I could not agree more. I think you look at this Sunderland team, one of the best promoted teams I've seen in a long time. This is a not some type of string together win. This is a very, very good team. And look, did they get luck, I guess, with, Talby, going from Club Brugge to Sunderland and, being a good player. Like that's something we see so often, that step from, other leagues in general, not even a league outside the top five into the Premier League and not working out. But yeah, I mean, you look at this Sunderland team and it's a team that does not quit, is extremely good defensively. That center back duo of Ballard and Alderete is fantastic. Uh, I think they are a team that have options, play well together, and I think Xhaka, to go back to it, is the center of that, not only scoring goals, but just someone who has that experience. And I really would wonder what the Sunderland team looks like without him, because I genuinely think they could be relegation spot right now without him.
Yeah, I mean, you look at the past few years, three teams up, three teams down, and I think the fact that Sunderland the reason why Sunderland have really been so effective, translated so well to the Premier League, is because of that physicality, and of course, that starts with Xhaka, who he does it all. He's obviously, like you said, one of the amazing passer. He can score. He's a leader, but so importantly, he's so physical in the midfield. Sunderland never feel like a team that's going to be outdueled, especially when they're at home at the Stadium of Light. I mean, they gave Arsenal, who are, I mean, they're like the big boys of the Premier League, the team that has Gabriel, the team that has Declan Rice, and Sunderland looked up for it. They were up for it all game long. Xhaka was a huge part of that. Noah Siddiqui, another player that I'll shout out, great player. He was a huge part of that. And Xhaka really just himself has brought that physicality and that offensive ability as well. That's really made Sunderland kind of the best promoted team we've seen, probably I would say since Leeds, I would say, in 2020 when Bielsa took them up. So I think he's done a phenomenal job. Unbelievable bit of business when you consider he only went for, I think, like 35 million, when we've seen so many more worse players, even at his age, go for more exorbitant fees. So I kind of expected all of us to take Xhaka, but it's just the obvious pick for me.
Yeah. I mean, I'd say that's funny. That's yeah. That I think is very fitting. We'll move on, and this, uh, unless you guys want to throw out any more, but I think that's a good way to yeah. I mean, the Sunderland segment, something we actually probably should have kind of honed in on, but I guess we kind of touched on it there. But all right, most disappointing signings, and this is not a one I'm excited for, and I'm curious to hear what you guys have to say, because I am very torn with this, because I do think it's a hard question to ask. I think it's much easier to point out impact versus non-impact. So I'll pose it to you as, who do you think is your most disappointing signing of the Premier League season so far?
So I
What
think,
I will do
okay,
for you just to start is I will set aside Liverpool players for this one because I think one, two, and three are Isak, Verts, and Frimpong. So
I don't
we
think
can
so
we
though.
can set aside Liverpool players.
But let's,
And you're
Charlie,
right, like it is
I
close.
agree. Here's what I'll say. Again, that's not to make an argument. I understand why. Here's what I will say. Verts, yes. I think now, no. I think Verts has been fantastic the past 3 games. Isak didn't get a preseason, so I
That's
kind
his
of
own
give him.
fault though.
Yeah, but his fault, not his
Who
fault.
doesn't play? Like he had two scenarios this
No,
season. He was either going to
he's
stay at Newcastle or go to Liverpool, and he didn't play at all.
yeah, but he wasn't allowed to leave.
He could have played
No,
anywhere.
obviously Isak isn't sitting and doing nothing. He's obviously training, but training with a team versus not is a completely different. Not playing with Liverpool versus playing with them is huge. But again, yes, Frimpong has been injured for. I still don't really have a.
Frimpong's been hurt. I
I
can.
still don't really have a conclusion or really an idea yet of Frimpong, because of he's had two kind of lengthy injuries. So that's what I would say about the Liverpool players. I think, yeah, initially you can say yes. I think Verts, out of all of them, I think would be the one that I could say yes, because the beginning of the season was poor and, again, still yet to assist or score. But I think recently he's been fantastic. So, okay, so I'll let you continue, but that was my tangent on that.
Yeah, I mean, I would say of the three, I'd actually pick out Isak because somehow, I mean, yes, look, the lack of preseason has
But yeah,
affected him,
still Premier
but
League.
by December 1st, he should look game fit, and he still doesn't to me. But setting aside Liverpool players, there are still other players that you can absolutely look at here. Um, I don't want to throw out names that you guys were going to use here. But a couple that I was definitely looking at, you've got Gyökeres for Arsenal, who just hasn't looked quite up to speed. I don't think it's worth signing of the season, but for
Yeah.
that price, your striker should be starting over Marino. Um, the name that I think I'm actually going to go with here is Xavi Simons. This is a guy who I was pleading for Chelsea to sign because I think he just would have been a really nice addition to our front four. And then especially with Cole Palmer getting injured, he would have just really fit in well. But he's had such a terrible start to the season. He's barely even starting for Tottenham, who look awful. And overall, he is another guy who just doesn't look like he's gotten his, um, even like his boots laced up yet. He doesn't look like he's hit the ground at all, let alone running. This is a guy who's got a ton of talent, and I think will definitely turn it around. But that's what happens when you go to Tottenham, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, also for the sake of it, I'm not going to include. I feel like Verts right now is clearly the most disappointing, but I think Verts could turn it around. And I'm actually gonna say, I'm
I feel
gonna
like
say
he
what
already
Charlie
is
said
halfway
earlier.
there.
He not he's got to get a goal contribution first. He's got to get on the board. But I think I could see. I thought that even though it wasn't his goal, it was a nice move. But I still clearly he is the most disappointing player this year. But the signing that I really never understood, and the signing that still rings true, I don't think it's been a great signing, as like Charlie said, has been Gyökeres. And a big reason for that is just not only that he hasn't been good, but the process of signing him, it just never made sense to me. Where everyone was talking about, oh, Arsenal, they need to get a gunman striker. They don't have that yet. But Yonkers was someone who was, I think, 27, 26 or 27 when they signed him. He played in the Portuguese league for a few years after playing for Coventry, so he never played in the Premier League. And when you look at him at the Premier League level, I don't think there's really a single thing that he does that he is good at this level, at this top level, where he isn't great aerially. He's not great at holding the ball up. I mean, he's someone who's fast, but he's not someone who's quick where he can go from 0 to 100 in an instant. So he doesn't really stretch the defense either. He's a good ball striker. I'll say that. He is a very good ball striker, but he just can't contribute in open play, nor can he really be a threat to defenders on the last line where that would justify the 65 to 70 million. I
I
think that
mean,
was the price.
he seems kind of like a glorified Nicholas Jackson to like
No, I think
put it in
Jackson is
harsh
way better
terms.
because I think
I don't know
Jackson is
about
at
that. I
least,
mean,
but I
Jackson's
think Jackson,
quicker.
but Jackson, from what I watched from Jackson, Jackson was someone who was absolutely good at, although you watched him more, but from what I could watch him, he is someone who could deal with the physicality of Premier League defenders. He was someone that could link up pretty well. He was someone that was even creative, especially with Cole Palmer. I felt like they really had a good rapport. Where Gyökeres, I just feel like he isn't someone every time he tries to go shoulder to shoulder with the center back. I always feel like he's coming out on the losing end of that. Once again, he doesn't have the pace really in behind where he can avoid that kind of contact as well. And he's also someone where he's 27. And I'm not one of those people who's necessarily like, oh, you have to be 21 and under if you want to be a signing for a Premier League team. But you have to be someone who's either prem proven or someone who at least is playing in a top five league like the Bundesliga or Ligue 1 where you could really justify that price. So I just didn't
So,
think.
so does this point hold true? Maybe this guy's an outlier because he should be an outlier. Does this point
Mhm.
hold true for Ozyman, who's not playing in a top five league and has never played in the Prem?
Well, he played. Well, he played in
He played
Serie A. That's
Napoli.
what I
Yeah.
will
But he
say.
does
I
not play in a
said
top five league.
he does not, but he did.
But
Whereas
also,
Gyökeres
he's
This was
also,
played. Well, he
3 years
went
ago
straight
at
from
this
Coventry. He
point.
but
went
also,
Coventry,
yeah,
but he
Osimhen's
went straight
also
from
showing up in
Coventry
the
to.
Champions League every single week
Yeah,
against
I mean,
good
Yeah,
teams.
no,
Gyökeres did
but
too. To
Gyökeres
be
scored
fair,
four against City.
no, that's what I'm saying.
Yeah,
That,
yeah,
and
yeah,
that's
So,
yeah,
where I think I
so
do understand. I do understand probably that was the logic where he did play well against City, but that City team was a very banged up. Like I think like Simpson Pusier was start. I think that's his
yeah,
name. I'm
yeah.
sorry,
That
but
is his
he
name.
was playing at
Yeah,
center back that game, and another one. And one of the goals was a pen. Another goal was a lot of space in a Champions League game where you won't see that space in the Prem very often. I just didn't think it was a signing where he was physically ready for the Premier League. I don't think he ever was going to be because of his age. And I feel like that's just ringing true. Where I think he'd probably, when everyone's healthy, he's probably Arsenal. He should be, at least in my opinion, Arsenal's third best striker. Where Marino, because of his ability and duels ability, obviously he's probably one of the best headers of the ball in the Premier League right now. And then you have Havertz, someone who he gets
sucks.
a lot of flack. He gets a lot of flack, but he showed up in the run in. He showed up. He did show up in the run in against City, even though they did lose the title race that year. I don't think Yucker. I think I said it in the episode where I think it was our summer transfer episode. I said I don't understand why they're going for Yucker as and Sesko
yeah,
when
yeah.
they
We
have
did. Yeah,
Havertz.
that's one of the.
So I do.
No
I just never
Havertz.
understood the signing. I feel like it's ringing true right now, and it may be me wanting to have confirmation bias on that, but I just never understood it, and I feel
I
like
yeah,
he's not going to be someone where they return on investment anytime soon.
I don't know. I like I get it. If I definitely I was on the side of understanding because when you're Arsenal, you look at who you have around him as a Saka, Odegaard. You have essentially everything you need. Like there are not many better players in the world. Like obviously there are, but when you look at, the extent at least of the Premier League than those guys, you look at Gyökeres, who physically obviously, hasn't been great, but physically is ginormous. So again, I he has 6 goals in 15 games, which obviously is not what you'd want and not like what Holland did when he got to the Premier League or of that sort. But I wouldn't say I have a verdict on him yet. And again, he's currently injured, which is why Marino is starting. Gyökeres would be starting if he was
He
healthy.
was on the bench. He
Well,
was on the
it's a
bench
bit
for the last
strange to
game.
me, too, because Serge, I kind of agree with you. I think that what we've seen from Gyökeres this far, like it's hard to judge him based on what 3 months in the Prem at this
No,
point,
right.
but he has the look of a player who's not going to figure it out in the Prem because
Hmm.
the
Mhm.
Premier League physicality and intricacies have made him look clumsy. And that's one of the things that, look, Lukaku looked super clumsy in his second stint at Chelsea. Um, and that's not something that you want from your striker. Nicholas Jackson looked super clumsy a lot of the time.
Hmm.
Um, it's just not something you look for, and you can't really get away with it because it seems like every time he gets on the ball, um, it's kind of just an avenue allowing a defender to take it off of him. And that's
Hmm.
not the way Arsenal want to play. They use Marino in a way that helps in build up and he's good aerially and he's not someone you can kind of push around like a little brother, and Gyökeres is kind of being treated that way in the
Yeah.
Premier League right
But
now,
it is
which is really strange for someone
yeah.
who was such like had such physical prowess at Sporting.
Yeah. I mean, he
Just the
absolutely has the
difference.
look. He has the
Yeah,
look of someone who's a
he
genetic
has the
freak, but
look,
he
he has
just
the size.
it isn't there. And I think the thing that I could say, and again, it is early, but once again, when you're looking at someone who again is already 27 years old, this is supposed to be his prime years. It is a lot more concerning. Where obviously Verts is very concerning as someone who costs double the price of Gyökeres, but at least there is still that room for growth, that adjustment period where maybe it's harder to give Gyökeres. And I think at the same time, the probably the most damning thing that I could say is once he came on for against Chelsea, even though Chelsea had 10 men, I was like, Arsenal aren't scoring. Because he just when you watch that game, he was getting whether it was I think it was Chalobah for the most part. He was going against Fofana a couple times. I don't think he won a single duel against him. I think they dealt with him really quite easily. And I just think that is something that is very concerning at this point. I think I don't think Arteta starting Marino over him was just because Gyökeres was coming back. I think Marino until at least until Havertz goes back will be the starting center forward for them.
But also
Yeah, and
it
yeah.
is funny. You look at and kind of a new era. Liverpool didn't start a striker at striker for most of
Yeah,
it. You look at the games that they were dominant one, Luis Diaz was a striker. And I think I think there's a potential where like obviously Holland will always be the outlier because he is
yeah,
so good and Harry Kane when he was at Tottenham, but and I guess Mateta is a good example of just, a great number 9, but I do think there is now kind of a potential misconception amongst world soccer that you need a classic number 9. I just don't
absolutely.
think that's something that is as important now because of how, how football is now, the 9 and generally in a successful team, I guess Holland kind of an outlier, is so involved in build up. And it's so,
Mhm.
you look at even Ekitike at Liverpool, you look at that game against Bournemouth, the goal he scored, he drops into the half and then they build from that and then he ends up scoring. So I do think that there is a new wave of and a new era of finding center mids like Marino that have that aerial ability and that have that kind of hold up ability and, putting them at striker and it works, or a winger like Diaz. So new
Yeah.
era. But yeah, the Gyökeres I agree with, but again, it's hard to have final verdicts on
But
anyone yet.
I mean, I
Yeah, I
think
mean,
for Gyökeres,
last thing I'll say on this topic, but I did think that really the saying Arsenal need a gunman striker all year long was very overrated. Especially when you have, I mean, you look at Liverpool. Obviously, I'm not saying Salah and Saka are the same level, but you have players when you have
They
productive
are.
wingers
Mhm.
that players that are when you have players that can get kind of double digit figures in the Premier League where they can get 10 goals, 10 plus assists. You can I feel like it's honestly sometimes better to have like that kind of facilitator kind of role where you saw with Liverpool. Look at how much better they were when they had guys like Diaz was I feel like playing that Fox center
Yeah,
forward role
yeah.
for the most part
He was
during that season,
fantastic at it.
where you can set up your best player, which for Liverpool was Salah, and he had the best year, I think maybe the best year of his career. I don't know,
Yeah,
2018 is
it's
pretty
this
close,
is an
but
unreal year.
I feel like it's better to kind of not try and force that role if there isn't a guy. Obviously, if you again, Holland is an outlier. If you can get Holland, you can get him, but you don't need to get that profile, especially when you have players not only Saka but Trossard. Trossard when he's played, he's been very productive for Arsenal in terms of scoring as well. Eze, someone who can be very productive off the wing. Martinelli, who had his best season when they had Gabriel Jesus at false nine in the role. So I really felt like the I feel like the gunman striker is really overplayed. I think it definitely applies to certain freaks of nature, but I didn't think that had to be the case for
Well, I
Arsenal.
think that it's not necessarily just that Holland's an outlier either, but you touched on it earlier. Gyökeres doesn't stand out in any of the ways that he needs to be that striker for
Yeah.
Arsenal. You
Oh,
look at
absolutely.
Holland, who just bullies people physically, and Holland is the outlier in the sense that he can do everything. But the other bigger strikers in the Premier League who are true nines, you look at someone like Isak, who is so quick and his ball striking ability is incredible. You look at Nick Voltemata, who's had
Yeah,
a
that is
great
true.
impact at
He's
Yeah.
been
Newcastle
Yeah.
this
fantastic.
season. That is a true nine because he is so good aerially.
Yeah,
He
that's
is
someone we should even
he is
talk about. What?
huge, and that's someone that I wanted to bring
Yeah,
up for the signings of the season
that's
part.
actually
That
number
he
two. Yeah,
he
yeah.
is able to win aerially so well. You look at even someone like Liam Delap last year at Ipswich was so strong and a great striker of the ball that he was able to be productive as a big, true striker. Um, Gyökeres does not have one of those abilities. He's not great in the air. He's not great physically. He's not quick enough,
All things he
and
should
he's
be.
not incredible
Yeah,
with the ball at
exactly.
his feet.
That's kind
So
of like
That's
the
kind of the
weird thing
irony
where he
with it
should look
is, yeah, you
he
look
should
at,
look like he
yeah.
yeah,
should do it.
yeah.
Yeah, Voltamata. Let's throw him up there just for. I know we didn't touch on him. I totally kind of he went over the head. Yeah, he has been a revelation for Newcastle. You look at, I mean, essentially doing what Isak would be doing if he said like he has been fantastic. But quickly before we close it out, I want to do my worst signing, and I this is obviously one that's going to be not a hot take, but just one that people won't really side with. But as a Liverpool fan, Harvey Elliott to Aston Villa, I think, has been one of the biggest
He went to
catastrophes.
Aston Villa?
Yeah, you didn't even know
I
that.
didn't hear that. No.
One of the biggest catastrophes of someone of his potential in a long time. You look at where Aston Villa are, where Harvey Elliott could fit, and I thought it was a perfect match. I thought he would be a starter come the first month. He is such a talented player. You look at the team they had around him, the kind of chemistry he'd be able to build with Morgan Rogers, and he has not seen the field, and I don't know how long. And it's as a Liverpool fan and someone who's been following him and someone who knows the talent that Harvey Elliott possesses and someone who to this day I will die on the hill. If he had stayed at Liverpool, I do think he could be a starter on this Liverpool team. I will always say that. And obviously now with Verts and the midfielders they have, that's probably not in the question. And I don't think he has a future at Liverpool, but that's one that I want to throw out there is just the what's the point if you're Aston Villa? They get him on loan. I think someone who could have a huge impact, and we've seen what he's been able to do in the Premier League and just to not even see the field has been disappointing. As
I mean,
someone who's a
that's a
fan of
tough
him.
one because I agree with you. I think Harvey Elliott's the guy who had kind of the world at his feet. He's a
Yeah.
really good player, really talented for sure. Not sure you can put his name up there for worst signing of the season because he was
Yeah,
free.
no, exactly. Yeah,
But
but
I
I'm just
do
saying, like,
definitely
yeah,
agree with you that that's just one that you look at and you go, oh, what could have been?
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Like what could have been. And now Villa started off the season really poorly, but they've turned it around miraculously since then. And I think he just hasn't quite fit in and he has not played very much, and
It's
that
not even that. He
sucks.
literally has not
Um,
played. Like, he would be
yeah,
playing
yeah, I
more
mean
at Liverpool.
he got 45 minutes against Fulham 3 months ago, but that's
Yeah,
about it. So it's really, really unfortunate to see someone of that
of that
talent.
caliber.
Um, although, yeah, I don't even
And
know
then
what
Jadon
club he's
Sancho
on.
hasn't
Yeah,
done
I mean,
anything.
I'm surprised that he would go there considering Emery's history of not really liking wingers that much, and he's not going to displace
But
Morgan
Harvey
Rogers.
Elliott's, yeah,
So
that's a tough thing because
I don't
Harvey
know.
Elliott's a 10. His best position is easily as a 10 or even as, in the midfield. That's his best position as a passer. He's not really a one-on-one player. He has a vicious shot and is a good passer of the ball and obviously has very good skill. So I think in the midfield, but unfortunately for him, Villa, you go to a team as a great 10. You obviously Liverpool can't fit in. So I think for him, I see him probably leaving Villa at least if I were him, terminating that and then going somewhere else.
Yeah,
Um,
but Surge, you bring up a really good point of Emery not really utilizing wingers because when you look at the current team they use, it's often Morgan Rogers, John McGinn, Emiliano
Yep.
Buendia as the wingers. These are all guys who are tens by trade.
yeah.
With Buendia maybe the one exception of someone who
But
can
yeah,
kind
he's
of do
kind of
both.
yeah,
But Harvey Elliott fits in that category, and it's still surprising to me that he doesn't get time on the wing because Kean, like you said it, like he is also, I think, an attacking midfielder by trade. Someone who came up through Liverpool and has played both over the last, what, 4 or 5 seasons,
mhm.
for Liverpool. So it is surprising to me that he doesn't get game time. But my guess is that, he was, I guess, kind of under the wrong impression that he was going to. Um, so yeah, I think a move somewhere else in January, or even, maybe Liverpool could utilize him a little bit more now.
Maybe,
Who
yeah,
knows?
maybe,
Yeah, I mean, I think I was under the impression that he was going to go to Brentford also during the summer.
yeah,
Yeah.
I
which would have
correct me if I
been
was wrong, but I think that was like
But
pretty.
that's
He was
another
pretty
team that
heavily linked
doesn't.
there, but that was a team that's been very. I think I heard when they were playing Arsenal, they're like top five in for goal scorer this year.
yeah. They've
Where
been
I feel like he
Igor
definitely could
Thiago,
have played.
another
He definitely
fantastic
could have
signing.
played. Yeah,
That's
Although
another
definitely
team that
could
doesn't
have.
really utilize wingers.
a lot of Penzo
Yeah,
for
but
Igor
he would
Thiago.
have played in midfield. I do
Yeah.
believe that he would have
Yeah,
started
yeah,
there.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah, possibly. I mean, they
I
play
think
such
he
a
definitely
defensive shape.
well,
It's
way
so
more time than he
tough.
would have gotten. Way
Yeah,
more
yeah,
time than he would have gotten at
More
Villa, I
time for
think.
sure. It's tough because they use wing backs a lot, and it's a lot of defensive midfielders as their
mhm,
midfield three, um, with
yeah,
two pacey wingers up front. Probably that's how they've kind of always played the last few seasons with like Embuemo and Wisa, who are now strikers.
yeah,
Um, but
Mm.
yeah, it's tough. I think this was Villa was probably just the wrong spot for him.
yeah. Well, that'll end it out, gentlemen. Another good, and we don't lose a beat as it has been many months. But thank you all so much for watching. Thank you all so much for watching and listening. We will be back soon. Um, yeah, man, it's a good episode. Key McDermott, Charlie Nadell, Suraj Kadali, the Back Pocket Podcast, episode 38. We will see you guys next time.